spool pins always go with the sharp spool toward the plug. So we'll drop that right there onto the easy loader, press the whole thing down, kerchunk, click it up by one. Hey everyone. So we've been talking about upgrading security, right? Here we have a pretty robust deadbolt. I'm not going to kid around here. Even though it may be using a standard Schlage 5-pin with a cheap bitting there, this is the deadbolt I have put on just about every home I've ever lived in since I turned maybe 25. The Schlage product line, again, I don't work for a Legion. I don't have any real affinity or professional ties to these companies other than, I know the guys in the cylinder division and everything like that. But the Schlage product line, the standard B60, what you get off the hardware store shelf, it's fine. It's fine. But their first step up on the commercial line, the B560, the grade 2 deadbolt, it is a real workhorse for me, and it's something that I've had on just about, for houses, for residential especially, this is my go-to. I really love it. If you want to spend the big bucks, I mean, the B60 at the hardware store, that's what, 25 bucks? This guy, you're not going much more. Again, it shocks people sometimes to realize what a commercial product really is. It's like $45 in most catalogs. The catalogs I can reach, but possibly you too. Check it out online. Check the 560. You want to really go nuts? You want the best of the best because you're scared of the COVID coming in your door, or you watch Fox News and you're scared of Antifa snuggling illegal LGBTQ people off the border to perform transgender abortions or something. I don't know what you're afraid of. They do have the 660. The B660 is it's like $100 some, right? But again, they're really, really good systems for a number of reasons, principally involving management and repair. The commercial line is specifically set up with the intention that whoever's using it is probably rekeying it, is probably installing it as part of another wider system. And with that, we have the ease of operation with example, what do we have down here? Inside the housing, another simple retaining screw. Absolutely. It's a key and knob setup. It's a regular kick cylinder, just like we would have in many of our practice lock kits. You swap out the tailpiece, you can convert this into, frankly, an American lock system like this. The 3700, we saw this operating with the same exact cylinder. I could pull this Primus out of here and be done in a second, swapping it right in to this 560 series. Let's disassemble a kick cylinder. If you've never done this with the screw cap on the back, sometimes they have little C-clips, sometimes they have screw caps. Come on, you should be familiar with this kind of thing by now with people like Lockpicking Lawyer and others who pick things open and then dump them out onto a pinning tray. Let's get our tailpiece off. Let's get our little spring-a-thing and detent. So impossible to find that piece if you lose it. Try not to let it go flying when you do this sort of thing. Now, right now, we are keyed to the cheapo SC1 bitting. We could pick this open if we needed to. If you didn't know the bitting, there are a number of ways. You can come in with a rear shim. If you've never seen the use of thin locksmith shims, we do that all the time in Red Team Alliance classes. But since we have the key, let's go ahead and get it turned. Okay, we've got this turned right now. I'm curious. Are you curious what would happen if we just pulled it all apart and had to rebuild the whole thing? Maybe you're curious how well, I told you this one was keyed a little bit better. Well, it's keyed the same, right? How is it more secure? Let's go ahead and look if we just dump out everything in this lock. No surprises on the key pins, but possibly the driver pins. Oh my, make a liar out of me. Standard cylinder driver pins. Well, that simply won't do. That dog won't hunt, Monsignor. We've got our springs. Let's put them down. And these cylindrical driver pins, well, most of them, they can buck right off. We're going to rebuild this way better than that. By the way, some of you have been noticing this strange key gauge that I've used a couple times in the videos now. What's that for? Well, if you accidentally make a mess of a bunch of pins, or maybe you're on an actual penetration job and you're taking a lock apart and you're interested in measuring those pins. Sure, You could go ahead and get calipers out and say, oh, I wonder if you don't have the key, let's say you disassembled a lock in a door. We talk about this all the time in our RTA classes, in the master lock attacks and so forth. Well, you could get in there with your calipers and, okay, well, let's see which pin size this is. We zero it out. Okay, squidge it up. Okay, 190. All right, well, that's a 2 pin. This one, probably a 3 pin by the look of it right here. This is probably going to be 210. Yep, sure enough, pretty close. But let's say you don't want to fart around with calipers. Let's say you're working with a known system. I mean, Schlage pins, if they were some other system, they wouldn't all be green in the lab system. So what are we going to do? Well, this key gauge card that I really like using, if you're not familiar with key gauges, most of the time you see them and they're metal, okay? So you've got a key, you want to know what the bitting is. All right, well, we look for the Schlage system. Okay, Schlage is on this card. How do we measure it? Okay, it's boom, 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 right down the line. You can do that with this card, this little, we call the devious gauge card. This is something I designed. Sure enough, okay, we can measure, measure, measure. But you notice there's a lot more cuts here. If I zoom in, you kind of get an idea of what those cuts are for. If I have, for example, a key pin that I've pulled out of a lock, let's go ahead and see, does it fit here, here, boom, that's a 2. Let's check this guy right here. Does it fit here? Fit here? Boom. Passes right through. That's a 3. So the idea is not only can you rapidly measure Schlage, Quickset, Master Lock, American Lock, you can measure the keys, but you can also measure the pins, even the master pins. I made this design. We're still working on ways to kind of mass produce it because students have been pretty hot for it. I've tried lasering some out of plastic. They work okay. I really, really love Andy, this guy who got in touch with me. Andy etched this. He etched this out of PCB. So it's really crisp. It's a really cool hack. It's pretty robust too. It's not, it's been in my wallet. It's been in my pick kit. I haven't managed to crush it yet with my fat ass. So at some point, you are going to see these showing up on either Red Team tools or in our classrooms at RTA or somewhere else. I mean, it's all an open source. It's all the design's on my GitHub. If you want to make one, nothing's stopping you from being as badass as Andy and just etching it out of PCB. I threw a link down below, by the way, to Andy's YouTube channel. If you're not familiar with my buddy Andy here, he's really freaking badass. He's, among many other awesome things, he's the guy who got Doom to run on a NES system, not just like packing a Raspberry Pi inside of a NES and powering that. He's actually connecting to, the video chip and driving it that way. It's fantastic. You should check out his channel, and I love that my work lets me connect with really cool people like this who make my projects even more awesome than I ever could. Okay, so I've reached into the big old lab kit and picked out some key pins that should match the bitting cuts from our Primus key. The key pins are standard. The driver pins are not, however, as you can kind of see here. If you don't keep a bag of goodies around, kind of locks that you take apart over time, sometimes they have some real interesting, real nasty pins in them. I always keep a little dump bag. You've seen this in my solve every problem, locksmith shop in a bag kind of video, right? And I reached in there and I got a nice little selection of drivers for us here. So we've got some sharp edge spools. We've got some these little red ones look like Lab made these. So they might be out of their Durex kit. I'm not sure where I got those. And just for some extra fun, this guy right here, if anyone recognizes it, this is an Ilco anti-bump driver pin, and it's paired with a very heavy spring. So all of these stacks in toto will make for a pretty nasty pick if anyone were to try to attack this with most means. What I might do once we get this working and done, I might go ahead and send this to Bill or to Lockpicking Lawyer or somebody, and we'll see if they want to have a little go at it, just because we all need something to do during the quarantine, right? I kind of did the ABUS thing where you leave a cylindrical pin way in the back to let the spool stacks all be stabilized. But if we're going to go ahead and pin this up, we'll need a couple more things. We've seen our pinning tweezers that keep showing up here. We'll also need a follower tool. And if I may for a moment, this guy right here, known as the EZ Loader tool. This is going to make you hate every follower tool you've ever freaking owned. And it's because of these little ball detents right here. It's got the beautiful big V-notch on each end. Very nice design, but it's the little ball detents which give you this beautiful ka-chunk, 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 positive click, click, click action as you go through the chambers. There's nothing like it on the market. And every student who, it's in our classroom kits, right? We give people kind of a whole litany of standard fare tools, and we do a whole lock teardown module. And then at some point, invariably, somebody screws something up or they're having some trouble, and I'll reach in my bag and I'll be here, give this one a try. And invariably, 30 seconds later, they look down at their shit, they pick up their plastic, hollow, whatever tool, and they throw it at me. And they go, "You asshole, I could have been using this the whole time." Yeah, the Easy Loader. Again, I don't know the company who makes it. I don't have any allegiance to them. I don't even think we sell it on Red Team Tools. We should. I don't know if we do yet, but if you get a follower tool in your kit, this is the one to get. So, if you haven't seen my previous videos on repinning a plug from top to bottom from scratch, let's take a look at that right now. So one of the first things I like to do is to go ahead and drop my key pins in the plug. Now this is assuming you have a good work surface. Maybe you have a little pinning tray or a pinning mat, so you know your plug's not going to roll all over the place and spill these guys every whichward. But this is just kind of a nice, again, I'm a big fan of just the sanity check as you're proceeding through. So if we're nice and gentle with this, how does that look? Does that look flush and even? Looks pretty good to me. I don't know how it looks to you, but I think we didn't manage to screw that one up. All right, great. We've got our plug pretty well handled. Now it's time to go ahead and populate the drivers up in the housing. And do you notice this? Which way is the front? On a lot of locks, the distance to first pin from the lip varies. Fortunately on this one, I don't think it matters, although I happen to know that this little dot mark is the front. But if you didn't mark it when you were taking your lock apart, that is something I strongly recommend people do. I'll even see people make an X or something, or a little hash mark on the Bible top cap. Yeah, know which way the front is. So, it doesn't matter much when you're loading the drivers if you weren't doing anything special with mastering, but it does matter when you go to put that pin back in. The beautiful part of that Easy Loader being double-sided means we can work from either direction at the same time. Let's start by going with 3 in the back and then 3 in the front. Now, what we're going to do is populate up the chambers one at a time. You populate a chamber and then you advance the driver, and then you advance the driver some more. So knowing that, how are we going to go? Are we going to go with our absolute deepest driver pin? No, the last one, that's one of the last things we're going to do before we get this driver out. We have to start in what is effectively the 4th chamber. So that Easy Loader, again, it's a great tool. We just drop the spring goes right into its home. We get our driver pin. Now, this is a very sharp spooled driver pin. You notice one side is much more of a pronounced cut than the others. Which way does that go? Does it have an orientation? Yes, it does. Spool pins always go with the sharp spool toward the plug. So we'll drop that right there onto the Easy Loader, press the whole thing down, kerchunk, click it up by 1. Way nice way to do this, isn't it? Next spring, drop that in. Now these little red lab spools, they are the same either orientation. Drop it, press it, kerchunk, advance it. We set our final chamber. We're going to do a solid cylinder of a pin. Let's get the spring dropped right in. Here we are. Drop it right on. Does it look good to you? Absolutely. Press it down, kerchunk. Excellent. 1/2 done. Let's flip it around the other way. All right, we've got 3 chambers to go. 1, 2, and 3. Now that little ball detent is pressing into a chamber that we've already populated with a pin, but that doesn't matter. We've got plenty of room in that chamber. All right, we've got a spring. Boop, right down. Drop it in there. Kerchunk, advance it along. Now we've got our real challenging guy. This will be pretty hard on our fingers and thumbs if we're not careful, but that heavy, heavy spring gets mated with this little nail, kind of anti-bump, super low mass driver pin. Give it a real good press. They've lightened up. The original generation was a red spring, and if you ever have one of those old red springs from the pin kits, you know they are heavier than hell. But this one didn't go in too badly. All right, we've got our last spring in the front, and we've got another spool. Now remember, is this spool angled? Is it oriented one way? Absolutely is. Very clearly, that is a really sharp lip. That will go toward the plug, so not deep down into the driver shaft. You want to flip that around. Clunk. There we are. Looking really nice and crisp, isn't it? All right. Looking pretty good. Let's see. Are we working? Yeah. There we go. And you can really feel that first pin is nice and easy, then all of a sudden, kerchunk, you really start riding into that anti-bump driver with its heavy, heavy spring once you get into the middle of the lock. But smooth enough operation. Most of the time when I install those anti-bump drivers, I do it all the way in the deepest position, by the way, so that the key will insert nice and easy until you're at the very end, and then you get a real pronounced click when you get that last heavy, heavy spring into place. And this one, not so much. All the more interesting to pick, right, fellas? Okay. Nearly there. Kick cylinder back in the 560 housing. Let's figure out we need the lazy tailpiece the correct direction so it is capable of turning this way. All right. And away we go. So, not that challenging, right? If you are trying to rekey a lock for your own home right now, maybe you've had a back door that's never matched the same key, you tell yourself, hey, you know, it's perhaps not that hard. Now, it's of course easy because I have a nice big pin kit up here, but there are smaller pin kits available on the market. There, for example, are pin kits that are specific to certain brands. If we're working with just Schlage, you can get just a Schlage pin kit on eBay. One more note about pin kits, by the way, especially when you got a bit of the creature on your workbench. Never, ever, ever, with the pin kit like this, if you close the lid, but don't latch it. This is like almost firearm level safety. Never ever leave a loaded firearm around in the chamber if you just leave the gun around. Never leave a pin kit laying around unless you've rendered it safe, because somebody, and that somebody is going to be you, is going to come along, swipe it and grab it and take it to some job, and you got stuff all over the place. And then boy, will you really need a bit of the sauce to ease the sting of that day. So please keep that in mind. Please keep in mind that any of this is possible. These kind of home security upgrades are not the sort of thing that should be intimidating, that you should be worried about, you know, can you do it or not? Do you have to call a pro? Give yourself a shot. You never know what you can achieve. And if you're really worried about this sort of stuff, if you don't know if you can do it or not, if you don't know if you could understand different advanced lock systems, well, you know, we do teach this shit, right? Red Team Alliance, we can talk to you about any number of systems. We're not a locksmith training program, although we can get you partway there with our disassembly. But if you're interested in making locks more pick resistant, more bump resistant, or if you're interested in higher security cylinders and systems, go ahead and shoot us a message. We're always happy to hear from you. And if there's something we can help you with while you're worried about the state of the world right now, well, you know, we're here for you. Stay safe out there.
Next time on Deviant's YouTube channel.
All right. We've got our commercial deadbolt working with the Primus key. And of course, we've got our Adams Right cylinder here. We've got the system working with this Primus key. But we still haven't done the inside, have we? Now, let's think about that for a second. If this is the interior of a door, maybe you've got a shopkeeper, and they're not going to give out their super valuable Primus key to everyone who comes along. But they do want to give their employees on the inside of the building the ability to maybe lock the door if they are going to the bathroom or something. Maybe they work alone. So perhaps you have the desire to operate the interior lock with both the Primus key and another key.
Stay tuned.